market, and also dabble into what's happened in New York, which has been a hot topic for today. So welcome, Bruce. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Elizabeth. Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Good.
Thanks for sticking around. I know it's the end of the day. So I'm going to talk, like I said, in Chicago. I keep kind of, it's like the old movie saying, you try and avoid regulation, but you keep getting sucked back in. I'd rather not talk about regulation. I wish that the bid license didn't exist. I wish we didn't have to talk about it, but it's so damaging that I feel like I do have to address it. But first, let me just cover a couple of the other things that are on the agenda. We all know that Bitcoin is an incredible tool for global change. And one place we see this is in the emerging markets. I travel a lot. I travel about half of the year outside the US. Almost all of that in emerging markets, particularly the Middle East and other areas. And we can see firsthand the massive difference that Bitcoin can make. Because right now, as we speak, there are millions of people who do remittances from countries in places like the Middle East to their home countries. And that's a multi-billion-dollar market that can be addressed. So there are groups that work on financial inclusion who track that lives can be saved as more people are entering the banking system, as more people leave the masses of being unbanked and have that base level of financial security. So it's not that much of a stretch to really say that Bitcoin can actually save lives. It really can, because it can help lift people out of poverty, and that does save lives. And there's a few different ways to do that that are really incredible. One is as an economic tool. The power that Bitcoin has as an alternative to traditional forms of currency, which have been for a long time manipulated and in many cases not in favor of the people who are using those currencies. Another way is the ease of use that Jason King talked about so eloquently earlier today. The ease for people to make contributions, and that is just going to keep growing. There's going to be a lot more great charity stories like the kind of things that Jason is doing because Bitcoin is such a superior tool for making those kind of donations. And we're going to see more of that with people who have an ability to give directly to those in need rather than going through the traditional intermediaries. And the other thing that is a huge benefit is that for the first time in history, we can have rich people and poor people on the same financial platform. People like Mark Andreessen, who is a wealthy and successful person, he owns Bitcoin. He can be on the very same financial platform as somebody who, up until now, couldn't get any type of bank account at all. So that's really significant. It's a really big deal, and it's just one of the many reasons that Bitcoin is going to change the world. The other part of it is the blockchain technology. Things like what Ethereum is doing will also have great potential with smart contracts and other things to change the world as we know it. There's a massive amount of good that can be done with this. There are lives that can be saved. There are aspects of property ownership and health and all of these other areas which can be radically transformed by decentralization and the things that Bitcoin, the currency, allows, and Bitcoin, the technology. It's a very big deal, and you know that already. Which is why it's particularly troubling that we have these kind of regulations that are coming out. How many people have read this bid license or read parts of it? I'll give you a couple highlights. According to the bid license proposal by Ben Lawsky, a non-elected official who, as I said on Twitter, we have a person who was not elected by anyone trying to create laws that no one asked for problems that don't exist. In his wisdom, Mr. Ben Lawsky has said, Bitcoin companies can't hold profits in Bitcoin. This is serious. Bitcoin companies can't hold profits in Bitcoin. Lawsky also says, and anybody ever hear of a company called blockchain? Anybody ever associate with blockchain in any way? You are breaking the law if Ben Lawsky's proposal goes through. The proposal says you cannot associate with companies who have a virtual address. As everybody knows, blockchain is progressive and cutting edge, not only in their technology, but also in their corporate structure. They're decentralized in some ways. They don't have a central office in New York, and they haven't filed their papers, and they do their work on blockchain and in Bitcoin. You pay them in Bitcoin, they pay their employees in Bitcoin. Illegal to associate with them if you want to be licensed in New York. Every business licensed under this BIT license must have a compliance officer. That means if you're a 3-person startup, you're going to have one of them be a compliance officer. One of my favorites, no altcoins allowed without a license. You can't invent a new altcoin. So we have Dogecoin. If somebody in the high school wants to invent Catcoin, they will be handcuffed and thrown in jail, according to Ben Lawsky. Another one, I could go on and on. I'll just give you one more of the many, many, many examples of preposterous, ridiculous, anti-business, anti-competitive, anti-technology proposals in this ridiculous nonsense that this unelected official has come up with. Another one, tracking all names and addresses of every single person that purchases everything. Pepsi, a donut, you have to get their address. It's so unbelievably ridiculous. There is another provision. Banks are exempt. Of course. Banks are exempt from all of these things. That serves a great public good, right? Also, there's a law in New York that says that regulators like this, who are not lawmakers, they're not elected legislators, regulators like this are not allowed to just randomly create new things if there's a chance it will harm jobs. So New York Department of Financial Services actually says, oh no, this won't harm jobs in New York. How absolutely, utterly offensive and ridiculous. So this is why I say, when a lot of people are like, well, what's our strategy for dealing with Lawsky? I say, absolutely not. He has proven himself to be, and I don't mean this as rhetoric, I'm going to back it up in a second. I don't mean this as rhetoric, troublemaking talk. It's easier for me to do what my colleagues do and just say, oh, yes, great work. That's what I'm supposed to say as a registered investment professional with 20 years. I'm supposed to say, great job for your foresight in regulating Bitcoin because it brings it legitimacy. But I cannot do that. I have to say the truth. And the truth, as hard as it may sound, as hard as it may be for me to say it, but if I'm really being honest, we have to call it like it is. And that is to say that Benjamin Lawsky is corrupt. Why do I say that he's corrupt? Because it is clear that he's working with the banks. There's absolutely no reason that I can think of that anybody could justify why banks would be exempt from this. That's corruption. I'm sorry, it's a hard word, but it's true. I believe he's dishonest. And I'll give you one simple example. Ben Lawsky met a fellow named Charlie Shrem, a friend of many of ours, almost every day, or I'm sorry, every week for a year. And then Ben Lawsky had his media show, his hearing, and the day before the media show, Charlie Shrem was arrested. And by the way, Charlie Shrem would have never been arrested if he worked at HSBC for being a suspect of suspicion that he failed to file a suspicious activity report. I mean, give me a break. He's not exactly Bernie Madoff, who by the way, just in case we forget, we all know Bernie Madoff as Bernie Madoff, the fraudster. Bernie Madoff was chairman of a regulator. He was on the board of NASDAQ. And he was chairman of the board. He was chairman of the board of NASDAQ, and he was on the board of directors of NASD, who was the main regulator. So let's not go out there too much and thinking that the regulators are always great at preventing fraud. They didn't prevent one of the greatest frauds by one of their own. But anyway, Ben Lawsky claims it's a complete coincidence that Charlie was arrested. Does anyone believe that? I'm just calling it how I see it. I believe he's corrupt. I believe he's lying to us. I believe he's dishonest. I believe he's violent. Why is he violent? Because he's threatening you. Everybody who raised their hand and said they use blockchain, everybody who thinks they might want to create an altcoin, every one of us who might want to create a business in China or Europe or the Middle East that will have one customer in New York, he is threatening us with violence. He's threatening us to put us in prison when he has no mandate to do so from the public. He was not elected by us. So I call him violent. I call him corrupt. I call him a liar. I call him violent. So why on earth are people in this space running to deal with this person? If you must reach out to public officials, reach out to ones that have some semblance of caring what the public says. Reach out to Andrew Cuomo. Call him out on this. Governor Cuomo is anti-jobs, he's anti-progress, he's anti-technology. Those are facts, because he is the one who appointed Ben Lawsky. Personally, I think it's a futile effort to deal with somebody, and I wouldn't do it in private life. You wouldn't do it in business. Why do we feel the need that we must engage this person who's proven themselves dishonest and corrupt and violent? Why? We wouldn't do it in any other situation. The only reason I can think of that we do it is the same reason that my friends and colleagues praise New York in public on their tweets, and then privately tell me that it's a complete joke. No CEO has come up to me in private and said, oh yeah, I think it's great that we can't own Bitcoin. No startup has come to me and said, oh, I can't wait to hire a compliance officer. No altcoin developer has come up to me in private at one of these conferences and said, oh, that's good, I was thinking about making an altcoin, and I can't wait to file for my vague and nebulous license process. In public, though, they praise him and engage him, and the only reason I can think of in the face of the evidence is fear. Fear. People have fear because he would not have his position based on merit. If I came in here as an unelected official who didn't have the ability to put a gun to your head, and I said, hey guys, I have a great idea. Let's make it so that you have to go through a process before you're allowed to create an altcoin, I would be laughed out of the room. He would be laughed out of the room in any Bitcoin meeting because his ideas have no merit. He wouldn't belong in this community with all of these intelligent and smart people. He doesn't know how to program. He doesn't know how to lead an organization, be an executive, or do any of the things that would merit attention based on competence in this space. The only attention he has is based on his ability to do violence, because we fear him. We fear his ability to put us in prison. And I say, and I don't take this lightly, because there are people that went through amazing struggles that make Bitcoin seem like not that big of a deal, the civil rights movement. But I say we can take a page from the chapter of some of the great people in history and use the immortal words I like to say, which is, nah, not going to engage. What happens if you throw a band party and no one shows up? What happens if we have a hearing and nobody shows up other than Professor Williams with his Bitcoin will definitely be a $10 prediction? Then what do we have? We have an insignificant, marginalized person, and Ben Lawsky can sit with Kim Jong-il and have his party about banning Bitcoin. And no one shows up. And we wall off New York, and every developer out there puts a piece of code that blocks New York IP addresses. And they can be a desert in the world of wonderful and great innovation and technology. And eventually their people are going to get a little annoyed about why can't I buy Dell stuff with Bitcoin. And a whole bunch of other people will do what Rosa Parks did and say, nah. We shouldn't be that afraid of it. You know? We shouldn't be that afraid of civil disobedience. You don't have to be that brave to say nah to a bureaucrat like Ben Lawsky who has no public mandate and was not elected. I'll do it. I believe that his regulations are a vast overstep of what he is entitled to do under New York law. I believe they are unconstitutional because I believe that we have a right to transmit numbers, that I can say numbers to you, and I can speak out a Bitcoin address 1358-A capital G, whatever. I have a right to speak that to you without being in fear of imprisonment. We have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We have a right to pursue the dream. Maybe we're all wrong. Maybe this won't change the world, help end poverty, create great innovation. But we have a right to pursue that. So I think it's a vast overstep. So I wouldn't think that it's that radical to say, let's have some civil disobedience. So I would like to see New York. A lot of people say this will be an example. New York's going to be an example of what happens. Well, let's make it an example that they don't forget. Let's not engage with this person. Let's not engage with him and try and get his absolutely bad faith, corrupt, ridiculous set of laws knocked down to half so we think it's some kind of victory. Let's completely and totally ignore it. Let's not make any responses. Let's not show up to any more of his hearings, which are, by the way, media shows. Those are media shows. Charlie Shrem, I have no doubt in my mind, was arrested because he was in this community, and he was arrested on purpose right before the hearing so that Ben Lawsky could use it as a media tactic to put the foundation on defensive, to put the Winklevoss brothers who were an investor with him on defensive, and change the nature of those hearings. And we were used. We were used when he did that. We were used when he goes on Reddit and goes on CNBC and laying groundwork for his political ambitions. We are used. We've given him authority in some ways. We've treated him as if he's some sort of expert. We follow him on Twitter. We like his Reddit posts. So we have some blame, but it's not too late to turn our back on this person who is proven to be operating in bad faith. Not everyone is in bad faith. Congressman Stockman is acting favorably. This is part of the political system. It may seem radical in some ways, but this is what you do. You do civil disobedience. You reach out, you do protests. You reach out to Governor Cuomo. You fund his opponents. How great would it be if Governor Cuomo loses because of this? Nobody wants to be seen as anti-jobs, unfair. Americans who don't even understand Bitcoin know in their hearts what is right and wrong. And there's something that rubs people the wrong way about having innovation stomped or squashed. So if you want to reach out to people and you believe in the political process, that's great. I'm not here to debate the merits of anarchy versus engagement. If you want to engage, that's great. Engage Ben Lawsky's boss. And better yet, engage people in places like Texas and New Hampshire and California who are more progressive, who don't have these ridiculous and onerous requirements. Engage people in other countries. You can engage. You can make your responses. But I would just say it's a futile effort to do so with somebody who has proven themselves to be most likely corrupt and dishonest and violent. If not, then completely and totally incompetent. The stakes are too high. There's too much going on. There are too many opportunities with this technology. It is truly exciting, and it is wonderful to be part of this. One of the greatest things that has happened since the creation of the internet. And like the internet, there will be some bad things, but there will be overwhelmingly good things. Lives will be saved by this technology, in my opinion. People will be lifted out of poverty. The world will be a better place. We all believe that. Maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong, but we have a right to pursue that, to talk amongst ourselves, to fund these companies, to work on these companies, work on these ideas, create new inventions like new altcoins, and pursue this. And we shouldn't be in fear. We shouldn't live in fear. There are people who have fought much tougher fights than this and made it through. Let's release the fear, focus on the positive aspects of this, and let's move forward. Thank you. That's time for a couple questions. I think. Questions? Go ahead.
Tell us how you really feel.
Tell me how it really feels. I mean, like I said, it's a lot easier for me politically, career-wise. I mean, I'm friends with the CEOs who make these positive tweets. I try and be friends with everybody in this space. As the space gets larger, it's harder. But it's easier to just sort of toe the party line and say what you're expected to say. But with something so important, I believe in Bitcoin. I believe that it is the most exciting thing I've ever been involved in my life. And I cannot sit here and lie or be a party to lying and claim that something's okay when it's not. So that's why I speak out. I encourage more people to do it. Other questions? Yes? Michael?
Excuse me. I've been calling this the Great Divide, the sort of early libertarian crypto-anarchists and the people who are saying, yes, Ben Lawsky, tell us what the regulations are. Where do you see this being in a year? Can the middle ground be reached, or is it going to be either they just say, all right, we're not going to regulate anything, or as much as you want? Is there room for compromise, or is it basically to be 5 companies going public and everybody else is in person?
Yeah, so basically the question is, where will this divide be with the pro-regulation versus anti-regulation people? And you mentioned kind of libertarian anarchists. I wish that I could never talk politics, because my goal is to not turn off anyone. Although Ben Lawsky may not have particularly liked my speech just now. My goal is to not turn people away, unless they've proven themselves to be a complete and total enemy. And by talking about principles like non-aggression, you turn some people off. 99% of Americans are either Republican or Democrat. Only 1% of people voted for Gary Johnson. So if you try and make it from a political angle, you can turn people off. I don't want to do that. So I'd rather not mention politics at all. But it's interesting, because the roots of Bitcoin came from this sort of libertarian movement. And it is so intertwined. It really is about freedom, and you kind of can't have both. It's not that I want to go out and preach to people about the non-aggression principle. By the way, I have a very, very simple philosophy. Very simple philosophy. It's not okay to harm another human being with violence unless it's in defense or unless they harmed you. That's it. And Ben Lawsky's rules cannot work with that. He has to do preemptive violence against the non-violent. Now, that's a philosophy that's kind of a libertarian leading philosophy, and unfortunately I could turn people off by that. I'd rather have Republicans and Democrats and independents and everyone else on board. I'd rather talk about the good things the technology can do, about how it can do remittances and how it can help charity and how it can help people in their day-to-day lives. But unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, or perhaps by design, it is so intertwined. It really is, decentralization really is about freedom. The tyrants of the future know what Bitcoin would do. They would kill every person in this room if they could. Hosni Mubarak would have killed 1,000 people to stop Twitter had he only known what it would do. So some of these things are intertwined. Freedom and technology and new ideas and the ability to share is intertwined. And where will it be in a year? I think that there is an awakening, and you can't stop an idea. An idea whose time has come can't be stopped by guns. It's here. It's here to stay, and nobody's going to be able to stop it. They can try, but it'll just come back stronger, just like other things in technology have. And people have learned, and people will be talking about these ideas, and they're going to stop and say, wait a minute, is it really cool to be handcuffing these guys for transmission of math? And I think that the things have been put in motion which won't be stopped and are going to change the world. So I think down the future, Ben Lawsky will go down in history with the Luddites and the people who wanted to ban the internet as somebody who made a big mistake. And he will be laughed at, and we will all see a newer and better world because of this great technology. Thank you.